Hello, my name is Jeff. Today we are going to build a hex counter without all the conversions from integers and back and forth. So let's get started. Also, this is a 10-minute video, so I will show the complete source code at the end of the video, and during the video I'll probably drop in sections of the code. So we open a new project. We're going to call it, you can call it whatever you want, but I'm going to call it Jeff's hex counter. Open this new project. So at this point, what I want you to do is I want you to pull up a text box. Text box 1, put it off to the right. Text box 2, put it into the middle. Text box 3, we'll put it to the left of that. And then we're going to select all 3 just for some neatness capability. Put it over here, and we'll pull our window in. Now pull a button, put the button down underneath. This is going to be our controller of incrementing. And then just in case you'd like to have a display that has some added items on it. So there you go. There's your basic hex counter. You can name your properties and do whatever you want. And you can call the button increment or whatever else you'd like to do. But that is the basic setup in the form design area. Now let's look at the code. Now with the code, you really only need 3 things. Here's the defaults that these forms use. However, what we really need is something that is not on here. Using system dot globalization. That is something that you need to have in order to be able to make your hex counter work. But a lot of this stuff you don't need. You don't need the text, you don't need the link, you don't need the drawing, you don't need the data. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create and designate some variables. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause, and I'll be right back with some code that we'll talk about. So presto, we are back, and what we've done is we've created a public area here, and we've defined that we want some integers, and here are our variables. But here is really the key of the setup in the counter. Within the system globalization, we have the ability to designate a change from a string, which is the textbox.Text, and it's going to parse it into that integer, and it's going to designate it as I'm going to read a hex number. So this one statement right here really allows us now that when we start writing our code down underneath, which is going to be the actual incrementing of the counter and making the overall hex counter work, we won't have to do a bunch of conversions within our code, because all we'll have to do is call up these variables and it will do it all for us. So once again, I'm going to insert a block of code, and then we will go down and talk about it just a little bit. Presto, once again. All right, well now we have what we set up in the beginning, our variables with this system of conversion, and then we're going to just simply start doing a incrementer, and we're going to have 3 2-digit hex numbers. And what we're going to create is basically a 6-digit hex number that gets displayed in text box 4. But the actual counter itself is right there. So let's look at what we've done. If the first is less than FF, that's nothing more than saying that this number that we're looking at, if it's less than FF, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to increment it, because if it's less than FF, we haven't got to the top number of a two-place hex number. And we're going to say that we're talking about text box 1. It's a string, but we're going to format it with these designators, which are the designators for a 2-place hex number. And we're going to reference our first variable to do our conversion automatically within this format structure. Now, if it is FF, then of course it would not be less than, it would be FF, and we want to reset that to 0. And when we reset it to 0, we're talking again about the text box, same string, same format, calling up the same thing. Now, as I said, there's 3 text boxes with 2-digit type hex numbers in each one. So the next thing it wants to do is look at the middle one. Is that less than FF? If it is, we increment, we put it out, blah, blah, blah. Quite simple, quite straightforward, and we move down to text box 3 all the way down to here. So what you end up with is basically you have 3 text boxes. The first one starts incrementing up. When it gets to FF, it goes back to 0. Then this middle text box starts counting up, or I should say the middle text box will start counting up each time that you get to FF in the first one. And then the same thing with the third, and so on and so on. So now let's do something with it to tie it to our form. So once again, let me put in a block of code, and for you it will be an instant. For me, I'll be right back in a minute. Alright, so here we are back again. Presto, bingo, bango, bongo. So what we've done now is we have put in a next event, which you're going to call my display, just to keep with our conformity. And what we've done is we're saying it's a string. So now we're going to take all this stuff and we're just going to use it as a string. It's a string, it's my display, it equals, the count is this. We're just going to put a little things in to kind of separate it out so that you can see what the end result is. Text box 3 is going to come in there. We're going to put a dash in between. Text box 2, a dash, text box 1. So in the display, it's going to say this count is, and point over here, and then there'll be a number with dashes in between the 3 hex numbers, and it will increment on its way upward. And we're going to take all that information and we're going to put it into text box 4 because that is going to be my display. Very, very simple. And then the last thing to do is what's going to activate it. Let's put a button click event. And in that button click event, we're going to put my counter, because that is the beginning. We want it to start running my counter, and we want it to do my display. And we close that out. Well, there it is. That is a complete hex counter. And we will show you what it looks like. Let's run it. But before we run it, the code isn't set up to deal with nothing being in the text boxes to start with. So let's just do this real quick. We'll take the text box. Let's go to properties. And in the text, we're going to designate it as 00. The compiler doesn't go, hey, there's nothing there. It's a null. We definitely didn't set it up for those exceptions. I just wanted to show you a simple counter. So now if we run it, it should come up. We have our numbers start to increment over here. You can see that the count is this with the little arrow, and your numbers are incrementing up. Let's start our debugging, and once again you now have the ability to count up. And when this gets to FF, you can just write it in there, but when it gets to FF, it goes to 0. This one starts incrementing up. When this one gets to FF, and this one goes to 0, this one goes to 0, this one increments. So that is a 6-place hex counter with code that is pretty simple, pretty straightforward, using the tools that are within there. So now, so that you can see the basic code idea, let's put this to a little bit. See if we can give you and this is the button click, so that every time we click it, it does something. I hope that helps you. Go ahead and rate my video too if you can. Thanks. Bye.